Another edition here of We Talk Fantasy, Godzilla Media's fantasy football podcast into November. One of my favorite times. Week 1 is great, but these next 2 weeks, right? You're looking at the standings, playoff scenarios, Thanksgivings next week, all that stuff. Excited to get into the topics this week. But before we do that, we got to give love to the people that make this podcast possible, Godzilla Media Partners and more. How about our friend Jared Lozier over at Northeastern Insurance? Maybe you've invested in your fantasy football team. Some would argue a bit too much for the summer months. Take your 2022 money and invest in something, whether it be a business, your home, yourself. The person to help you do that and make those decisions is Jared Lozier. Contact him today, 518-956-3753. Email him, Jared, Jaredl, at anymail.com. Jared, Jaredl at anymail.com. He's a Colts fan. He's loving Jonathan Taylor. If we brought him on the podcast, he would talk about how wonderful Jonathan Taylor is, how wrong I was about Carson Wentz, and how good Darius Leonard. That is what Jared can do for you. But again, your business, your home, your 2022 investments and more, reach out to him. Tell him that Kyle's waving his Bills helmet. Chet thinks his Steelers are still the best. Email him today. Talk to him about We Talk Fantasy. Jaredl at anymail.com. Northeastern Insurance, proud sponsor of us here on We Talk Fantasy. Guys, I don't know what Odell Beckham Jr. is doing with his fantasy insurance investments or anything else, but he decided to play this and say, I want out of Cleveland. I'll maybe sign with all these contenders. Shockingly, and I say that sarcastically, the Rams decided to sign a big name. Chet, I'll start with you. What do we make of everything that happened on Monday Night Football involving the debut of Odell Beckham Jr.?
Well, we know where Odell's from, right? It's from New
Louisiana.
Orleans. What is Louisiana known for? I'm just going to say it. Voodoo. I'm telling you, the Beckham family created a voodoo doll of Mr. Robert Woods. And they poked Mr. Robert Woods right in the knee. It's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, the Rams look like geniuses because when this, trade first got announced, everyone was like, why? You don't need OBJ. You got Cooper Kupp. You got Robert Woods. Van Jefferson's up and coming. Tyler Higbee. This offense doesn't need OBJ. The same day he gets signed, Robert Woods, was it a torn ACL?
Yeah.
Yes.
In practice, goes down, and now OBJ has become much more relevant in real football, much more relevant in fantasy football. We need to chill out on game one with the Rams. Just calm down. This is a Sean McVay offense that I guarantee is not simple. This is not simple. You don't just go in there. Yeah, I know you can be like, call the play, then look at OBJ and like run a post or run an out. And yeah, a lot of the terminology is the same. But this was a game where the Rams fell behind. Yeah, they threw the first pass to OBJ, tried to get him acclimated quickly. But when you fall behind and the game script's not working in your favor, you can't have a guy out there that doesn't know exactly what he's doing because that can result in turnovers. And we saw plenty of those from Matt Stafford early on. So I'm very curious to see how this continues to develop. I think OBJ is going to play a major role. This team loves to throw the football. And somehow Cooper Kupp keeps catching all them footballs. But I have to imagine at some point defenses are going to be like, we're going to make somebody else beat us. And that's when OBJ can have a huge impact.
Yeah, Jay, you hit the nail on the head with like chilling out in the first
relax.
With the first game. People see the snap count. OBJ got 15 of the 55 snaps in the game. 27%. Panic mode, right? No, chill out. You literally hit the nail on the head with understanding the offense. Who was the third wide? Could either one of you name the third wide receiver that was ahead of OBJ on the depth chart last night?
Torrey Holt.
Ben Skowronek.
Oh, that's the other white guy? Yeah, I've never seen him.
So he played 42 snaps. Okay, you think he's a solid piece. All right, let's break it down by half. Beckham with 11. Ben with 14. What's the correlation here? They were down at halftime. OBJ has no idea what the offense. He had one practice with them. Ben has been with them all season. Weird how this works. So yeah, chill out. OBJ will be a part of the offense now with Bobby going down, and the Rams offense got better. It got better. even though you lost Woods, it still got better. So if anything, the worst case scenario, it's a net neutral. And that offense was pretty darn good. They've had a couple bad games. Stafford has had bad games, and this game was on Stafford. He made some terrible throws. And also Van Jefferson decided to not know how to catch the ball. Maybe some pressure, thinking he needed to outshine OBJ and really step up. But relax. He has a ton of fantasy relevance. I think his situation now is extremely interesting when you're in terms of like a dynasty league. It was a veteran minimums contract. He is going there to try to win a Super Bowl, and he is going to try to go somewhere else after that. So definitely a lot of fantasy implications out of this whole OBJ situation. But again, I think you're looking at maybe another week, and then you can probably look at what OBJ's usage is and then get an idea of what his value is. Is he a flex play? Is he a wide receiver too? What does that end up shaking out to be?
Guys, I have a question for you. Does this kind of feel like this is it for OBJ? Like, if you can't put this together and be productive, why would another team want to take a flyer?
I would have said that about probably other positions except wide receiver. I go back to Josh Gordon, right? Like Josh Gordon got busted with pots so many times, and he really has never been as good as Odell Beckham Jr. It seems like of all the positions, just off the top of my head, it's defensive end and wide receivers get the most second opportunities. Defensive end, you're just
Jackson's still playing somehow.
Exactly, right? Like some of these guys, just because of their athletic ability that they can beat somebody one-on-one, they'll get another chance. I know what you're saying, though. Like if you go 5 years and you're not productive, why would he's not getting a 4-year, $60 million? No. He's not getting a Sammy Watkins contract. And I use Sammy Watkins just because he got a stupid contract for nothing he'd really done production-wise in his career.
How about this? Let me rephrase that. Is this it for OBJ in terms of fantasy relevance? Like if he bombs and doesn't have top 25 performances, at least on somewhat of a consistent basis, we just move on. Like in terms of you don't have to draft him. If you want to take him with your last pick, sure, to have a cool name in your fantasy league. But like this is it. If we don't see with Matt Stafford in a pass-heavy offense with Sean McVay, if you can't be productive there and fantasy relevant, I'm out. I'm never going to say his name again on this podcast.
Chad, here's the thing. I think to that question, we're there now. Like, we're here right now with Odell Beckham Jr. The question you kind of pose is more about future. Like, he's got a chance to change that. But here's kind of the best way I could describe Odell Beckham Jr. I know a lot of, pardon the interruption, used to play this game where you'd fill in the blank, and sometimes they didn't actually say a word. They'd make a noise. That's how I feel like I'd describe Odell Beckham Jr. if I saw him in a lineup right now and I was playing. It's like, oh! Like, you know, they like the expression like when a 14 or a 13 beats somebody on a buzzer beater in March Madness. Oh, the ups! Like, you know, a little Dickie V to it. That's how I feel. In the same way with like your own fantasy football drafts, right? Like if you do live drafts and you see a huge name come off the board way too early, you're like, oh, what are they doing? No! That's how I describe Odell. Like if you see them in the flex, you're like, oh no, what's he doing? But that same thing is if you can get beat. If Odell Beckham Jr. goes for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, you're like, oh no. Like I just feel like there should be little snippets of just that as the podcast. Maybe that'll be the name of this one. You'll see, oh no. Like that's what it is. That's how I really feel about him. Yeah.
It's like you see someone set in the lineup and in the group text, you're like, what an idiot. But deep down, you're like, oh my God, please don't let this be the game that he comes back. You know, like I would never feel confident starting him, and I'm never going to feel confident going against him. That's how I feel.
This whole OBJ situation to these exact point is like when he bops off, he's going to be like, oh, Odell's back. And then he's going to not be like, there's Odell. It's literally Texas. Oh, Texas is back. No, he's not.
It's the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs this year. Yeah. I had to turn off the radio today with so many people like the Chiefs are back. The Chiefs are.
No, they're not.
I complain about this every year. It's just we react so quickly to things. One bad game, they're done. And it was more than one bad game for the Chiefs. We had every right to be concerned, and I still am. Yeah, they beat the Raiders. There were some very 50-50 balls that went their way. And then we're all like, yep, they're back. They're Super Bowl contenders. They're probably the favorite in the AFC. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, let's see a couple games in a row where they play well. That defense had one okay game. Ooh, Jesus, give me a break.
I love how this podcast, the first 10 minutes, has been summed up by sound effects and drops and everything else. It's definitely the case. And maybe Kyle has to get his chance here to make a noise or some type of weird tribal instinct. Sneeze, cough, bark about how to describe Cam Newton's fantasy football value. Cam Newton's back. Potentially is the starter going forward for the Carolina Panthers. Kyle, I'll turn to you. Make or say or do whatever you'd like involving Cam Newton.
You're not back. Cam, you
Nailed
gotta
it.
stop, dude. You knew the whole thing. What was gonna happen is the Carolina Panthers were gonna put you in the game to make everybody think Cam. You're not back. You threw some shit balls. They looked bad. Congratulations, you ran a touchdown and you just lobbed a pass over fucking people just to get a touchdown. Cam, you're not back. You need to chill out. Cam, I think, is in an interesting situation though. Do they start him over PJ? That whole offense right now is a train wreck. I honestly stay away. If you are in a 2-quarterback league, you need to pick up Cam Newton. Yes, you probably should in case something happens and he pops off. I'm not expecting it. PJ Walker is the better quarterback. He has shown that he can throw the ball. I do not think Cam Newton has the receivers in that offense to make him successful. His receivers that he's got are downfield threats. He needs to throw 10, 15-yard passes, and we've seen it the last 2 years. Cam's 10 to 15-yard passes are off target. They're not great. He has running potential. He has those red zone threats. But don't forget, there's also still CMC in that offense. So how many times is Cam Newton actually going to get onto the goal line? Maybe if it's 1st and 1, you throw Cam Newton in there to go to that quick quarterback sneak. But again, I would still personally trust Christian McCaffrey to get in the end zone over Cam Newton. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, for God's sake, what was it? $4.5 million of his contract was if he was the Super Bowl MVP. It ain't happening, guys. It ain't happening.
I just wish now that we had Laviska Shenault on this team so we could have Cam Newton throwing shit balls to shit nuts. That would just be fantastic for my Sundays. I think Cam Newton's going to be the starter. They paid him enough money to be the starter. I think I saw a tweet that Matt Rule says he's going to get the majority of the first team reps this week. That kind of indicates where they're leaning. And am I rushing to my waiver wire to add him? Like Kyle said, it would have to be a deep league. It would have to be I can't even think of any quarterbacks that have been injured recently. But it is interesting just because of the rushing touchdowns. Like him and CMC in the goal line, if they run the options, is he going to dump it off? Like there's going to be opportunity there for him to kind of steal some 6-point rushing touchdowns. They're going to make some like what Jalen Hurts was for the first half of this NFL season, where he wasn't throwing over 200 yards, but he was rushing for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's a really good fantasy week. So you have to think about it that way. It is just like, it's weird that it just felt weird. Was I the only one that was like, what year is it that Cam Newton is back and Mark Ingram is a saint scoring touchdowns? And I'm like, have we gone back in time? Is COVID-19 a thing? Like, where are we? And it was kind of funny to see.
Yeah, the Cam Newton critics would say it's always been about Cam, like Kyle pointed out with I'm back, or is his version I'm not back. And like Chet said, it's feeling like the days of the dabs coming back and the Superman flex. And the post-game press conference is great too, because Kyle pointed out the clip that's gone viral of him screaming at Cam in the post-game press conference. Says, look, it's not all about me. Well, you just made it all about you.
Yeah.
You just did that, man. So back to Chet's point, that kind of circles around here. That's what I'm concerned about if you're a fantasy football manager who has Christian McCaffrey, that Cam's just going to keep it for himself at the goal line. He's like, I got something to prove. I'm with you on the take that I believe he is also the best option for the Panthers. Sam Darnold stunk. PJ Walker's had opportunities. He hasn't cashed in yet. Cam Newton at this point is the best option for the Panthers at quarterback. And I wonder if a selfish Cam Newton might get at 1.2 rushing touchdowns in a game. So all of a sudden that's a 12-point performance with no passing yards and no turnovers. Here's what I would do with Cam Newton. Look at your roster, literally go through it. If it's 14, if it's 16, if it's 18, figure out how many players still have a bye week on your roster. It feels like you're probably at 70% that have already gone through it if you're maybe planned it ahead. I would pick up Cam Newton just so nobody else gets him. I would play that for fantasy football. You guys both made great points about 2 quarterback leagues. Cam Newton's probably the number 1 grab in waiver wires in those 2 QB leagues. But seriously, I would go in a 1 quarterback league to go get Cam, because especially in December for those quarterbacks that are high passing numbers, where the certain something we're going to talk about here in the mailbag coming up is a little bit different, I would just grab Cam so nobody else would get him. I would just do that. Let's do this, because I got a little tease here that I just did there for weather, and I want to go to our Johnstone Supply in Troy mailbag. We got not 1 but 2 questions as we get ready for our Johnstone Supply and Troy mailbag. And right now, it's November and December, and things are starting to change in your home. Now, how do you make that happen? Well, maybe you call them up, 518-272-5922. 518-272-5922. The Goodman furnaces are now in stock. If you're looking to make that change in your home or your place, Johnstone Supply in Troy on 6th Avenue can help you find exactly what you need for this November and this December. Look, you might be hosting the big holiday events. You might be having something that is Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever it might be. Johnstone Supply and Troy wants to make sure that your air filters are updated, your furnace, your air purification, whatever it takes to make it happen for you this next 2 months. It's so important to be ready to go. Again, Goodman Furnaces now in stock. Find out more about Johnstone Supply in Troy by calling them today. One more time, 518-272-5922. Whether it's George, Kev, James, our guy Tom's a huge Titans fan. Still feeling it from Derrick Henry. Support these guys. Holiday hours include 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays here in November and December. Make the changes that you need. And by the way, if you have any questions about your boilers, your furnaces, and one more time, 518-272-5922. Johnstone Supply in Troy. They will help you, and they provide us our mailbag. 2 questions again. Question number 1 comes from Nick P., and this is less statistics and more ethics, and I appreciate him being honest. He goes, guys, my team was a top 5 team in points. However, I was 1-7. That's always heartbreaking. And I built for 2022. In other words, I traded away a lot of my good players for next year's draft. However, I've won the last 2 weeks. What do I do?
Man.
So a question of a fantasy football manager preparing for next season, but now winning. I'll let either one of you start with this because this feels like a difference between fantasy football and the real NFL of the real terms of tanking.
So I'm assuming that in this league that he's in, the next draft is based on where you finished?
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming this too, yeah.
Yeah, because I haven't played in one of those before, so I've never really been in the situation where you're literally tanking for that top spot, which, and honestly, I don't want top spot. So he might be actually in a perfect position where I'm assuming he can't catch up. Like, there's no way if you lose 7 times, you almost have to run the table, and then you'll still probably miss the playoffs. So I would, just so you don't piss off everyone in your league, I would continue to set a competitive lineup, and it'll probably balance itself out. Like, if you traded away your best players, I can't see you winning every game. So you got a couple wins under your belt, you save some face, and maybe you get that 3. Or I'm pretty sure statistically, the number 4 pick is the best pick to have in most style drafts, because you still get a top 4 player and you get the first pick, compared to those other guys in the second round. So don't tank. Don't bench guys. We actually have a situation in our Dynasty League. It's not so much tanking, more so just idiocracy, where someone in a pivotal matchup.
Kyle's laughing, by Kyle, do you know about this or no?
Yes.
Yeah, he's in. Kyle's also in this league.
Okay.
It's very annoying.
And I'm going to save this. I'm going to circle back to it because I also have a question on this. But essentially, a guy in a pivotal matchup facing a division leader left Kyler Murray and Julio Jones in his lineup, and he only lost the matchup by like 6 points.
Oh.
And he would have handed the division leader a loss, and it could very well cost someone a playoff spot. Like if we look back on it and this guy gets in by 1 game, it was because of this. And so we'll circle back on how to handle that situation. But essentially, don't be that guy. Don't be the guy that pisses off everyone in your league where you gift somebody a win, because that's not fun for the other people that are, competing and trying to get into the playoffs. So keep setting your lineup. And then, hopefully you just lose and you get the better pick.
This is where I think in dynasty leagues like this, you do not draft based on where you finished to avoid this exact situation. It needs to be random every year.
Too much at stake.
For this exact reason. And I agree with Chet. Don't tank. Don't be that guy. I still think it's fun. You said you're the 5th highest scoring team. It's not over. You somehow get a little lucky. You finish 8 and 6 on the year. Make it to the playoffs somehow, and you can put pieces together. I mean, it's still available.
No, so I think he's 3-7. Goss said.
Right. Oh, okay. So he had 7.
That's almost impossible. Unless it's a big playoff.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a high scoring team too. So what are the other? I think it also depends on what do the other teams look like. How like too many options, but yeah, don't tank. Try to get value where you can, and like I said, like Chet said, set your lineups. Don't be that guy.
Did you guys see on the ESPN league? I think it's a new addition this year. They have your playoff percentage in the standings.
Ooh, I did not see that.
How cool is that? And so, I mean, if this guy is in ESPN, just like, if it literally says 0%, then If there's a few percent, like I've looked at it in some of our leagues and I'm like, that guy's in last place, but it says he has 5% chance, huh? So you're saying there's a chance. And it does take into not just, where you are with record, but I'm assuming it also takes into account, like if you've lost some of your best players. Like, for instance, the guy that's our division leader, the one that somehow won this week, lost Derrick Henry. His team's not very good. He's going to struggle, and his playoff percentage is actually lower than other people that are behind him. So it takes into account you're probably not going to play very well down the stretch. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe potentially, I'm guessing no because he asked this question. Divisions sometimes can help you. If you're in a small division, you get to 7-7, like kind of Kyle's got. Hell, 6-8 with enough points, you might be able to sneak in. And I say 7-7 and 6-8. That still sounds weird that fantasy is 14 weeks now, so it's still getting used to that. To the overall question too, that you guys have both answered, keep bye weeks and injured players out of your lineups. That's it. Yeah. That's it. Like, if you put in somebody you think's going to stink, okay, at least you're putting an honest effort in. And you can't complain, and I know some people do this, like, hey, on the waiver wire, I wanted this guy, but the last place team in the league picked him up. Now it's going to cost me. Okay, he's playing, though. Like, he's competitive. He had the waiver claim. Sorry, like, he's not going to start bye week guys or injured guys. So that's it. Simple as that. No bye weeks, no injuries. Don't piss anybody off. If someone says your team sucks, they already know your team sucks because you traded away a bunch of picks. So that's kind of like common knowledge in your league if that's happening.
Exactly.
Chet, do you want to go to the dynasty controversy, or do you want to go with the other question you had involving how things are about to change here when you look up at an NFL game?
Yeah, I actually completely forgot what that question was. But so let's just do the dynasty controversy.
Okay.
So as commish, I usually try to swipe through the lineups to make sure everybody has set theirs, and like some people forget, and this guy is kind of a repeat offender. Because this is such a literally pivotal matchup, and this guy should have lost by 30 points. Should you have the power to go in and fix his lineup? Or is it like, because I mean, we're talking about a guy, Julio Jones was on IR on Thursday. Kyler Murray was ruled out more towards game time. It was just like, it left such a bad freaking taste in my mouth. And I guess part B of that is, should that guy like just automatically be kicked out of the league? Like, is it one of those, like, is that such a bad offense? A repeat offender. I feel like one time, okay, maybe you had an excuse. You went to church. I don't know. But if this is becoming a repeat thing, is this plain and simple, like you're not getting invited back to the league?
I have been in a league. This is the league I've been in the longest. It's going to be 20 years next year. God, I'm old. We've kicked out more than double-digit people. Like, double-digit people have been kicked out of the league. Because, and now, look, most of those kickouts or suspensions, whatever they are, they date back to, like, the late 2000s where fantasy football was kind of still in its infancy and all that other stuff. So that's kind of the rule. I would go with the 3 strikes, which is kind of what I think you were hitting at. Like, okay, we've given you 1 warning, you didn't update. Second time you didn't update. If you do it 3 times, you just got to hit the conversation with and be like, look, there is stuff on the line, whether it's a belt, a trophy, money, whatever. Like, hey, you're costing somebody money, and it seems like you're trying to help them win. So people are going to get pissed off, man. We just can't do it. Like, if you're costing somebody, even if it's your friend or your family member, like when you mess with people's money, people can get pissed off. And I think rightfully so. So that's kind of my rule on that. Like 3 times you've infracted, you're costing somebody else something, and it's not just you personally, it's somebody else. So I think 3 strikes and you're out is a very fair rule.
Hey, guys, you want to be in a dynasty league?
It's a good league.
I've never been in a dynasty league before. I got asked to be in a dynasty league this year. Let's do this. We'll talk contract potentially next summer.
All right, we'll wait till the free agency officially begins.
That's right.
But so the question, it just magically appeared in my head, the one I'd forgotten. Is it becoming more and more? I try to check it every single week, but the later we get in the year, as we get late into fall, approaching winter, and you're making the playoff push, is it more important than ever to not only check what the weather is going to be, especially in those cold weather places like Green Bay, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and are you okay benching lock it and forget it players that would almost always be in your lineup based on weather?
I think I can talk a little bit to this question just because, like, being a Bills fan, if you're playing players like Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, the weather I feel like is a much different question for those guys because they practice in it, they're more used to it. Now, to a specific kind of weather, if it's a torrential downpour and there's just water all over the field, yes, I think there comes a point where you have to bench those kind of guys because field conditions are going to impact it. Think about the Bills game in 2017 where they played the Colts in 3 feet of snow.
Right.
You're going to bench every single one. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, the running back, every single player playing in that game is on the bench. Jonathan Taylor, every one of them is on the bench.
Didn't LaShawn McCoy break off a big touchdown run in that game?
Yeah, in overtime to win it.
Yeah. So
and it was by big, it was 25 yards.
Nice. Yeah.
But I mean, that's the I 100% agree with it. I think if you have some severe weather conditions, yes, I don't want to play Chris Godwin coming up to Buffalo in the middle of December for in the snow, even if it's just light snow and there's snow on the field. They're not conditioned for any kind of elements like that.
That's a fantastic point, Kyle, because you bring up people that are used to it. We've seen Devontae Adams ball out in the snow.
Right.
Like the guys that play in it and practice in it and are around it and have adjusted to it, I'm okay with. But you bring up the great point. The players that play in the South that are used to warm weather and they get off the plane and it's, half of what it was in Miami or down in Houston or playing a dome, that's like a shock when you get on the field and have to deal with those elements.
Well, you also texted it to me this weekend too. So I've been unfortunate enough to watch so many games in Miami. It just got done raining. That field was a train wreck, and it wreaked havoc on Lamar Jackson. Every time he tried to step up, he slipped. But who didn't you see a lot of slipping coming from? You didn't see a lot of slipping coming from the Miami Dolphins because they play in it, they practice it, they have the correct equipment, they know how to maneuver in it. So in the Ravens, they don't get that kind of conditions with a soggy, grassy field. They have turf because of the snow. So I 100% agree. You have to look at those conditions and the specific conditions based on team geography matters.
In honor of the great Syracuse weatherman Wayne Mahar, I would say wait to the day of to make those decisions because that's the worst part. Like personal experience. I remember on my wedding day, I constantly checked the weather, and I was checking a week out and 2 weeks out, and I got fortunate it didn't rain right when we hit the altar when we were outside, but I was checking it days in advance. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't help. But if you're going to make that change, here's another great piece of advice when you're talking about the weather affecting a lineup. This is, even if you're not someone who bets on sports or wagers on sports, find out what the open over-under is on a certain matchup you're talking about. Like, let's say, I don't know, the Bills and the Patriots. We'll just say that for an example. Okay, the game opened at 56 combined points over-under. All of a sudden, it's Sunday. You go check it out. It says 49. You're like, whoa, 49? What the 7? What that? Oh, snow is expected in Western New York. A foot's going to fall during the game. Okay, no one told me. Oh, okay. Let's make the adjustments as needed. So Sunday, keep an eye on the over-unders because if the weather starts to hit, you might see those numbers start to crash, and that's maybe the best way to evaluate it rather than impersonating my legendary weatherman I grew up with, Wayne Mahar.
I love that. And I will say the other position that I probably paid attention to the most when it comes to weather is honestly kickers.
Yeah.
I also, because, you deal with waivers and maybe you had to drop Tyler Bass or another great kicker that, you were going to ride with, Justin Tucker. When I'm now picking up somebody else, I 100% look at who plays in a dome or who plays in warm weather, because those guys, when we get down, when it's slippery and you're slipping in Miami or it's snowing in Buffalo, give me the guy who's kicking in 65-degree covered dome. That's the guy I want kicking for my fantasy team.
I like it. Weather being a factor going forward for fantasy players. We're about to get to waiver wire and starts and sits. It's probably going to be a very short waiver wire as we get deeper and deeper into November. Maybe just one player we're interested in. But before we do it, we want to tell you our friends about Mohawk Honda. Mohawk Honda, the Kelly Blue Book offer is going on right now. Freeman's Bridge Road in Glenville. Make the drive out to the Capital Region and find out about the inventory. Trust me, you're going to hear that word constantly here in the holiday season. Inventory, what's in stock? How do you get it? Where's the vehicle I'm looking for? Mohawk Honda has it. Continuing to do great service across the Capital Region in upstate New York. Make the drive to find out what you're looking for. I've got the Pilot in my driveway right now. It's the best vehicle I've ever had. You just seen me maneuvering out of the Times Union, MVP Arena, whatever we're calling it now. Look at that backwards camera, baby. Look at me move this thing out of there. Levac can help, but that's besides the point. Mohawk Honda and the Pilot, whatever you want to have, find, you can do it. Again, connect with our people, Greg Johnson, Cam McKenna, Hot Sauce Doyle, Lindsay Harridan, John in Service, who I don't know if you guys heard another podcast. I was so excited to work with John. I was hugging random people in Panera who looked like him. Hopefully he never hears that audio. Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you, even lookalikes of people in random places in Glenville. So, Kyle, just be aware that if people see you in Glenville at Panera, that was not me trying to hug somebody who I thought was John. Anyways, let's get to the waiver wire. We can't pick up John Higgins on the waiver wire, although I would love to. Kyle, is there one player, one position? What does this look like here in mid-November, or is it nothing? Slim pickings.
I think there's still three. I'm gonna kind of skip some of the names that are probably up there that you're looking at. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson with Harris in concussion protocol this weekend. He didn't come out. Stevenson had a great game. So you're definitely going to want to look at him if he's available. I'm not a big fan of the Deonta Foreman. It's still three running backs in there. I hate it. We talked about Cam Newton. I got two wide receivers that I'm pretty high on, especially over the recent games. Rashad Bateman. I believe most people should have him in leagues. I just had the stat or the ownership percentage. It's about 31% in ESPN leagues. Bateman had a pretty good game. 8 targets, 80 yards. And he led the Ravens. I mean, I've said it a lot of times. I am not a fan of Hollywood Brown. The dude just drops balls left and right. Bateman's been consistent, especially since he's come back. And Lamar has consistently looked at him more and more as the season goes on. Last 2 games, 8 targets coming out of the bye. So it feels like they're making a reason to get him the ball a little bit. So I do like grabbing Bateman on the wire. Another one who Chet might like this pick because he went down this week with a sprained ankle. Cordero Patterson going down. Wayne Gallman stepped in and had a little bit of a nice game. So we forget a little bit about Wayne Gallman. We'll see if Cordero Patterson can go, but 15 carries, 55 yards. He had a catch. Can he be used like Cordero? Maybe. Mike Davis has looked really bad. I mean, have we seen a game like Cordero or like Wayne Gallman had from Mike Davis at all this year? Has he gone over 55 yards? I feel like he hasn't. But I do like Wayne Gallman if you're lower on the waiver wire pick, do not use a top 5 pick on Wayne Gallman. But I do like him as a solid pickup if you're near the bottom and you're just looking for an option. And the last one, who might be sleeping on a lot of people's rosters, that I will honestly, I'm gonna say this because I was just kind of checking myself. I just found him, and I don't know how I didn't even think about it. Marcus Johnson for the Titans. Julio Jones on the IR. Had a really good game. He's caught 5 of 6 targets, 100 yards, and a touchdown against New Orleans. So obviously they still got A.J. Brown. The running game with the 3-headed monster of Peterson, McNichols, and now Foreman.
Are we calling that a monster? Can we call it
you're right.
a three-headed person?
The
three-headed pedestrian?
Yeah, let's call it. Yeah, I don't even know.
Sea urchin.
Yeah. Good call. My bad. But Marcus Johnson, I mean, I think they're going to have to throw to win some football games. The running game is not as lethal as it is. As long as Julio Jones is out, does it open up some options for Marcus Johnson with A.J. Brown getting double covered? So don't hate grabbing him with a top waiver wire priority, especially if you are in desperate need of a running back like I am.
Kind of funny that this was not intentional, but as you were talking, I was scrolling on Twitter. I was listening, but I was just, checking out Twitter, checking the Siena basketball score, etc. And I scrolled across a tweet that talked about Wayne Gallman. So, according to Arthur Smith, the head coach of Atlanta, Wayne Gallman's usage in that game was due to the quick turnaround of Thursday night and the fact that they were getting smacked.
Oh.
So it could be, I might even lean more towards this is maybe the most confident you would be to start Mike Davis, who's been a big disappointment so far this season. If Cordero's out, I'm feeling much more confident in the Mike Davis play this week. Gallman could still split that load with Davis because that's what's kind of been happening with Cordero. But it is interesting that, Coach Smith confirmed. It was just like, hey, we're losing so bad. Let's not get anyone else hurt. We know we have to play on Thursday in a tough matchup against, I believe, Tampa Bay?
New England
versus Atlanta. There you go. See, Tom Brady, it's, synonymous with New England sometimes.
And somehow, Chet just kind of talked with that. I was right. Mike Davis's high in yards this year was 53 yards on 13 carries. My God.
I don't know what happened after Carolina, but not great.
I got to ask both of you a question here about waiver wire moves because I believe I might have put in a claim this week for this. And I wonder if this is your guys' strategy when you hit the waiver wire. Chet, I'm going to start with you. Do you ever just flat out look at targets alone? Look, I get like yards and catches, all that. Like if you saw a guy have 10 targets and he had like 4 catches for 40 yards, would targets alone intrigue you enough to put somebody on your roster?
Absolutely. And I might get a little bit greedy and not try to waste a waiver. Am I the only one that knows that this guy almost had a big game? Depends on where you are in the waiver and how smart your league is, where you're like, yeah, someone else is on top of this as well. But absolutely. I mean, that's the name of the game. Like, if a guy has 2 catches for 2 touchdowns, that's fluky. If a guy has 10 plus targets and only, 40, whatever it ended up being, that is a guy that they really wanted to get involved in the offense. And that's a guy that is going to produce more consistently than the Van Jeffersons or from a few years, McCole Hardman. Like guys you get really excited about because they had a huge play. Those don't happen every week. You want the guys that are going to give you more consistent play.
Kyle, do you agree with that as well?
100%. I mean, when, for example, people are probably panicking about Mike Gesicki, 7 targets, no catches. No, stop panicking. I
think it was 9 targets.
Yeah, it's even worse. But still, You're getting targets. You're getting looked at. The ball's going your direction, and no matter how shitty of a quarterback play you have, one of those 9 falls into the lap, and it could be a big play. So I 100% agree. Targets is a big thing in my play. It means you're being looked at.
Yeah.
I just realized, by the way, my face is frozen for anybody on the digital side. You can obviously tell that. I've been doing some questionable things, and I'm like, if this camera turns on, like I am full finger up my nose right now, and I'm like, that would be so unfortunate. I also just picked a wedgie that was like I had to stand up for. So if the camera had turned on, that would have been a very hard thing to explain. So yeah, just kind of funny. I hope this thing stays frozen.
We can only imagine. That's what it is. That's the beauty of audio. Someone's thinking like, oh man, now I could have all these images in my head of what Chet Davis. And now the next time someone sees you doing a sportscast, they're going to see those thoughts in their mind.
Yeah, booger fingers.
For Yahoo, and depending on whatever league you play in, Yahoo, ESPN, NFL.com, most of them, I know in particular Yahoo, they have added the target sortable status on a waiver wire, so you can just scroll to the right. And I'm glad we did this. We probably should have done this a little earlier. Back in September, October, but we don't care because we want to take it to our advantage. We can be selfish sometimes on this podcast. You can sort targets. Now, big piece of advice, careful week to week. Like I would go like week 8, week 9, week 10, and try to do some quick math in your head if there's somebody still on that list that says FA next to it or whatever it might be. Like good example, Ray McLeod is one of the top 7 targets this week. And why? You're not picking up Ray McLeod. Great name, wonderful person, I'm sure. That's not how this works. So just caution. Just 1 week of targets may not be enough, but 2 to 3 weeks just to clarify that point because now people are going to tweet us about Ray McLeod and blame us for it.
And I hope he goes off again.
Could you imagine if that's how we lead off the next podcast? We all crapped on Ray McLeod and look what he did.
It's like the apologies we did earlier in the season.
That's right. Yes.
I'm in a good mood today. And thank God we did do this podcast on Sunday night when I was not in such a good mood. So I'm going to leave you guys with this because I have to go edit highlights for my day job. Fantasy football freaking hates me. And you know what? I actually have to change that. It's not fantasy football. It's dynasty football. The invite that you have to this league, guys. It's cursed. You will get to see firsthand what happens to me every year. It's not just like, oh, Chet had a... It has become such a laughingstock within our group chat that everything I touch crumbles and dies. And sometimes not even the things that I do touch. If I think about something, it dies. So just to give you, a little refresher, we've talked about this before on the podcast when Chet gets out his violin and bitches and moans about how bad things have been in my dynasty career. This is what year are we in, Kyle? Year 3?
Yes.
Year 3. Okay. I could have a spreadsheet of injuries that have happened to me, to not just like random ones. I'm talking like top 3 round picks of guys that have gone down. And so let's just focus on this year. Just for a recap. J.K. Dobbins was my keeper, supposed to be RB1. Yikes, tears his ACL 2 days after our draft. CEH was supposed to be my RB2. He's been out for how long? He's been on IR? I don't know how long. Logan Thomas, after I traded away Travis Kelce for my beloved DK Metcalf, my tight end was supposed to be Logan Thomas. How long has he been on IR for? Brutal injuries that are so hard to come back from. With that being said, Cordell Patterson saved my season, kept me competitive. I'm second place in my division. I think my percentage of the playoffs is like 90%. I'm looking good. I decide to make a win now trade, a trade that's going to catch me up with Kyle Ray's juggernaut team. I trade for Aaron Jones.
Oh.
I just traded for him. I just got him. I just freaking got him, man. I traded away the phenomenal one who had a horrible week, so didn't miss out on much there. But I traded away some dynasty value to get my guy, Aaron freaking Jones. And not only did his injury cost me this week, who knows how long the ripple effect of that will be. Now, thank God I held on to A.J. Dillon. I've had him since since Kyle traded me in that Travis Kelce trade. So I have a solution there. I lose Cordero Patterson potentially for this week. Ankle injury. This goes to Kyle's point. He hates that I have depth. F you, Kyle. My depth might save me. But I bring up the point, I don't even have to actually physically touch these guys on my team, because I almost did a trade a few weeks ago. I was going to do another mega trade for Miles Sanders and Darren Waller.
Oh.
Literally days after the trade fell through, Miles Sanders, is he done for the year? I think he is.
Basically, yep.
Yeah, and Darren Waller got injured. I texted the guy. I'm like, dude, I don't even know what to say. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I targeted your players. Should this be my strategy now, guys? Should I send Kyle a trade request right now just to give me Josh Allen, Kyle? I'm going to send you a trade request right now. He's going to break his femur on Sunday. Like, it's absurd that this happens every single year, and now multiple times a year, that I get decimated. Mind you, the other I did this exact same thing 2 years ago. I traded for Alvin Kamara midseason. First week I had him is when Kamara got hurt that year and missed the last month of the season, wherever it was. To the same guy. Maybe it's Kyle Breen, Kyle. Kyle Breen hates me. I don't know. But, dude, it's absurd.
Chet is quite possibly the greatest monologue in the history of We Talk Fantasy. It's well done, and it's been boiling in you for not just weeks, but for months, but for years. Kyle, I'm going to make this executive decision, if you don't mind this. I feel like it's almost unfair at this point if I ask you who to start or sit this week, because Chet will offer you that trade. So to protect your fantasy team, I'm going to title this episode Voodoo and Strange Noises Only, because Chet might have more voodoo power than he realizes. I'll just offer to start David Montgomery this week because he's coming off an injury, and Chet can't hurt somebody who was already just injured. Think about it. Think about that, Chet. So you're not touching my roster. So, Chet, I'd like to sign off. I think that's the best way to end today's podcast, if that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
I'm a little concerned that I said I touched my players. I kind of want to change that. Can we have an edit?
Nope.
Is there an edit button? I don't touch my players inappropriately, I swear.
Goodbye. I'll talk to you guys next week.
Goodbye.